we are done talking about attraction, affection, relationships, where solid and long lasting relationships go through these distinct stages of love, of course, falling in love, becoming a couple, creating a lasting love, and finally to a lifetime commitment to each other in what we call as marriage. Okay, so this time we are now going to talk about a very interesting topic, of course, but let us just clarify here that the marriage, the kind of marriage that we are talking or we will be discussing here is the marriage specifically in the Philippines, wherein it is based in our own customs, traditions, culture, laws, of course, based on our laws. And so the marriage in the Philippines is governed by our family code of the Philippines, and the family code of the Philippines specifically and clearly and definitely provide these definition of what marriage is. So, according to the Family Code, Chapter 1, Article 1, marriage is a special contract of permanent union between a man and a woman, entered into in accordance with the law for the establishment of conjugal and family life. It is the foundation of the family and an inviolable social institution whose nature, consequences, and incidents are governed by law and not subject to stipulation except when there is the marriage settlements, which the law particularly says that this could be the only exemption, and that exemption is when there is this marriage settlement to fix the property relations during the marriage within the limits of this code, particularly the family code. So again, guys, marriage, as defined in our family code, is a special contract, and it is a permanent union between a man and a woman in accordance with the law for the establishment of conjugal and family life. So when we say special contract, what makes it very special? Okay, we know for a fact that when we talk about contract, it refers to the agreement or the meeting of minds between two or more parties. But when we say marriage contract in the Philippines, it refers to the meeting of minds, okay? And it is entered into voluntarily between a man and a woman alone. Hence, sorry to say this, but same sex marriage is not yet legalized in our country. And so the marriage that we have is only for male and female. And another important thing to note is that what makes it special is because all the stipulations, all the things that would govern between this um, contract is being stipulated by our law. It is being stipulated and it will be governed by our family code. It is not up to the man and the woman to put into writing the things that they would want to do within their marriage. Okay, the only exemption that our family code provides is that when the couple or when the husband and the wife would fix their property relationships, okay, so they are allowed to have a prenuptial agreement in order to settle or to make an arrangement, a special arrangement when it comes to their wealth and property. So, for instance, you are that wealthy, you're the super rich person. So, to protect your wealth from a gold digger spouse, okay, the law specifically provides an exemption for that, wherein the couple would submit themselves into a prenuptial agreement to fix or to settle their properties. So I think it's a very good exemption that our family code provides because in our country it is not rare, but in fact so common that our properties are being passed on. No, we usually inherit the properties of our family, and so we have to safeguard those properties so that we could also pass it on to the next generation. And I think this particular exemption has something to do with our culture, which is the close family ties, and which is really and actually good. Now let's proceed to Article 2, wherein it states that no marriage shall be valid unless the essential um, the essential requisites are present. So what are these essential requisites that we're talking about? The essential requisites are the following. First, the legal capacity of the contracting parties, who must be a male and a female. And second is the consent freely given in the presence of the solemnizing officer. So, in number one, there has to be a legal capacity for you to enter into the said marriage contract. And you have to be male and female again. And second is that your consent must be freely given, and that you voluntarily, okay, it is out of your own volition that you submit yourself to be married to this particular person. And it is not a shotgun marriage wherein you are just being forced to do so because, oh, a hand was being held, and so you might, someone might kill you. That is not allowed here. When you enter into marriage, it has to be out of your own free will, not from any other people's threat, intimidation, or uh, yeah, coercement. You cannot be forced to enter into this said marriage there. So in Article 3, there is this formal requisites of marriage also. So for the marriage to be considered as legal and valid, there are these formal requisites that are required. Number one, the authority of the solemnizing officer. Number two, a valid marriage license, except in the cases provided for in Chapter 2 of the Family Code. And number three, a marriage ceremony which takes place with the appearance of, excuse me, of the contracting parties before the solemnizing officer, and their personal declaration that they take each other as husband and his wife in the presence of not less than two witnesses of legal age. And in Article 4 of the Family Code, it says that the absence of the essential or formal requisites shall render the marriage void ab initio. Okay, so what do we mean by void ab initio? It means it is not valid from the very beginning. Okay, so if the marriage is considered as void ab initio, then it is deemed, or it is definitely considered that there was no marriage at all, and so it is not valid. Okay, now however, there are exemptions, and that is being stated in Article 35. Now, a defect in any of the essential requisites shall not affect the validity of the marriage. However, the party or the parties responsible for the irregularity shall be civilly, criminally, and administratively liable for the said irregularities. Now, in Article 5 of the Family Code, any male or female of age 18 years or upwards, but not under any of the impediments mentioned in Articles 37 and 38, may contract into marriage. So you may ask, what is Article 37 and 38 about? Article 37 actually talks about the marriages between a or the marriages that we consider as consistuous or incestuous. Oh my God, forgive me. Again, Article 37 talks about marriages between the following are considered incestuous and void from the very beginning. So whether relationships between the parties be legitimate or illegitimate. Number one, between the ascendants and then the descendants of any degree. And number two, between brothers and sisters, whether of the full or half blood. Okay, so you are never allowed to marry your own mom or dad or your brother or sister, whether it is your half brother or half sister. Why? Because it is considered as incestuous marriage. Hence, it is void from the very beginning, so it is not valid nor legal. Now, in Article 38, it has something to do with marriages that are void from the very beginning for the reasons of public policy. So, what are these kinds of marriages that are considered as against the public policy? Number one, between the collateral blood relatives, whether legitimate or illegitimate, up to the fourth civil degree. Number two, between step parents and stepchildren. So, guys, mind you, okay, you might say, "Oh, he's just my step brother. He's just my step dad. So if my mom dies, I could marry him." No, it's not allowed. Okay, due to public policy. Marriage between step parents and stepchildren are prohibited. Number three, between parents-in-law and children-in-law. Oh my God. Okay. So again, between parents-in-law and children-in-law. So this is even ridiculous to think about, no? So why would you ever do so? However, maybe some people would, out of the blue, maybe they just fall in love. But then they are prohibited to get married because, again, for reasons of public policy. Number five, between the surviving spouse of the adopting parent and the adopted child. So, for instance, you are an adopted child and then you get married, your spouse is not allowed to marry your parents whenever for instance you die. Okay, that is again against our public policy. Number six, between the surviving spouse of the adopted child and the adopter. Okay, and number seven, between an adopted child and a legitimate child of the adopter. So for instance, you may be a legally adopted son, and then you fell in love with your sibling, okay, legally, that he or she is considered to be your sister by virtue of legal adoption. You are not allowed to marry each other. And then number eight, between the adopted children of the same adopter. So if both of you are adopted, still you are not allowed to marry each other because by virtue of our law, since you are legally adopted, then you are already treated as a real siblings, a real brother and sister, and hence our law considered it as uh, not valid to marry each other. Okay, and lastly, number nine, between parties where one with the intention to marry the other killed the person's spouse or his or her own spouse. Okay, so for instance, you get married already, and then suddenly you met someone who is probably more handsome, more beautiful, and then you fell in love. Or it could be someone from your past, and then they resurface out of nowhere, and then you realize that you still love each other, and then it leads you to become a murderer. And so because out of your crazy stupid love, you decided to kill your spouse or the spouse of your loved one so that you could marry each other, then that marriage is null and void ab initio because it is against our public policy. So that's under Article 38. Now, let's proceed to Article 6, wherein it states that no prescribed form of religious rite for the solemnization of the marriage is required. It shall be necessary, however, for the contracting parties to appear personally before the solemnizing officer and declare in the presence of not less than two witnesses of legal age that you take each other as husband and wife. And take note that the declaration shall be contained in the marriage certificate, which shall be signed by the contracting parties and their witnesses and attested by the solemnizing officer. How? Okay, now please take note that there is this kind of special marriage, okay, a marriage of different kind, and this is what we call as a marriage in articulum mortis, okay. When you are at the verge of your death, but still because you really love this person, and so you decided that before you die you must marry the love of your life. So when the party at the end, okay, or at the end of his life or at the point of death is unstable to sign the marriage certificate, it shall be sufficient for one of the witnesses to the marriage to write the name of the said party, which shall be attested by the solemnizing officer. So that's about Article 6. Let's now move forward to Article 7. And it talks about the officer who is going or who is allowed rather to solemnize the marriage under the family code. So Article 7 states that marriage may be solemnized by, number one, any incumbent member of the judiciary within the court's jurisdiction. So this refers to the our judges, okay? Any number two, any priests, rabbi, imam, or minister of any church or religious sect duly, which is duly authorized by his or her church or any religious sect, and provided that at least one of the contracting parties belongs to the solemnizing officers, or it belongs to that particular church or religious sect. Another, number three, any ship captain or airplane chief or airplane pilot in case mentioned in Article 31, and that is marriage in articulo mortis, okay, at the point of death, at the verge of death, a ship captain, the airplane pilot or chief is given by our law to officiate, given the authority rather, to officiate or solemnize the said marriage. Okay. Number four is also a special provision. Any military commander of a unit, okay, to which a chaplain is assigned in the absence of the latter. Okay, for example, there is no chaplain that is present, so the military commander is thereby given such authority to solemnize the marriage in the absence, of course, again, the absence of a chaplain. Likewise, only in the cases mentioned in Article 32. And again, that is marriage in articulum mortis, or and when marriage is conducted during or at the point of death of any spouse, or could be both spouses. And number five, any consul general, it could also be the consul himself or herself, or the vice consul in the case provided in Article 10. We'll talk about Article 10 later, okay? Now, let's proceed to Article 8. Article 8 states that the marriage shall be solemnized publicly in the chambers of the judge, or in the open court, or in the church, chapel, or temple, or in the office of the consul general, consul, or the vice consul, as the case may be, and not elsewhere, except in cases of marriages contracted on the point of death or in a remote places in accordance with Article 28 of this code, which is our family code in the Philippines, or where both of the parties request the solemnizing officer in writing, in which case the marriage may be solemnized at a house or place designated by them in a sworn statement to that effect. However, guys, this last line here, when you say it will be conducted or solemnized at a house or place designated by both couple, it has to undergo a very close and strict scrutiny before it will be allowed. Because what is actually being allowed here in our law is that the marriage must be solemnized publicly in the public chambers of the judge. Why? So that if there are anyone who would like to object the said marriage, they're free to go there. Okay, so kiddingly aside, that is our law, and it is clearly stated in Article 8. Now let's proceed to Article 9. A marriage license shall be issued by the local civil registrar of the city or municipality where either contracting parties habitually resides, or except in marriage where no license is required in accordance with the law with Chapter 2 of the Family Code of the Philippines. So what is this about? When can a marriage be exempted to get a marriage license? Okay, it is when, okay, a man and a woman have already been living together as a common law husband and a common law wife, and then after living together for 5 years or so, but not less than, are now being exempted to get the said marriage license. Okay, so that's Article 10. And now, to be very specific with all the essential aspects of the marriage in the Philippines, let us tackle one by one or in details, okay? What are the required documents and information? Okay, so if it is your first marriage, of course, I would assume that this is your first marriage, since you, my dear students, are all very young, and in which I hope you are not yet planning to get married. Okay, I hope that you would first finish your studies and then secure a good career, perhaps to provide for yourself or for your family. Anyways, that is what I'm hoping you to do. But if you are so excited to get married, then this is how you do it. Okay, so again, required documents and information. If this is your first marriage, the local civil registrar will ask to see your original birth certificates or your baptismal certificates. Okay. However, the baptismal certificates is not required if you will have your marriage in the civil court of law. But if you're gonna do that in the church, especially in the Catholic Church, then your baptismal certificate is definitely required. Now, the certified true copies may be accepted. However, you have to have it notarized and have it certified as a true copy. You need to provide your full name, of course, your residence, and then your citizenship, and also it includes the details of your parents or guardians. Now, if either of you or either of you is not a citizen of the Philippines, let's say you are an alien, you came from other country, and then you just decided to come here to the Philippines because you think Philippines is a very romantic place to get married, then All you have to do is you have to submit or provide your passport and a certificate of legal capacity to contract marriage, and an affidavit in lieu of the certificate may also be accepted. However, you need to check with the consular's office. Okay, you have to go to your consular officer to make sure that they will provide the said affidavit. Now, let's talk about the age requirement and then the parental consent and also the parental advice. Is it necessary? Okay, now, guys, if you think that you're already 18 and you are already of legal age, you can get married right then and there, then you're wrong. Why? Because if you are under the age of 18, you definitely cannot get married in the Philippines. Okay, but if you are at the age of 18, but you are, how would I say this one? Individuals must be at least 21 years old to get married in the Philippines without parental consent. So if you are 18 years old and then you are below 21 years old, you need to have a parental consent. Now, if your parents cannot appear with you before the local civil registrar, a legal affidavit with the signature of two witnesses may be accepted. Now, individuals between 21 and 25, again, must ask their parents or guardians for advice upon the intended marriage. So let's be very clear, guys. If you're 18 and you are below 25, you need to get a parents' consent. And then if you're in the age between 21 to 25, you need to get a parents' advice. And then you have to submit that one or and then if say for instance, they your parents may not allow, okay, they advise you not to get married, what would you do? The marriage license shall not be issued, take note of this, until after 3 months following the completion of the publication for the application. Therefore, now it is very important, guys, that a sworn statement by the contracting parties to the effects that such advice has been sought, together with the written advice given, if any, shall be attached to the application for the marriage license. Now, should your parents or guardians refuse to give you any, no, this fact shall be stated in the sworn statement that they have refuted or they have advised you not to get married on that particular moment. Okay. So in the Philippines, before you get married, we have this so-called waiting period. So there is a waiting period for 10 consecutive days while the notice of the marriage application is posted on a bulletin board outside the local civil registrars. What is the reason for that one? This is in order to avoid a fraudulent marriage. Okay, this is to make sure that the person that you're going to get married to marry with rather is without any legal impediment to do so, and that there is no previous marriages or there are no objections to the said marriage to be conducted. So there. Now, are there any fees? Yes, there is. So you check with your local civil registrar for the fees that they charge for a marriage license. Now, fees for a marriage license, however, may be waived, meaning it could be given to you for free, provided that both of you as couple has no visible means of income, and that you really could not afford to pay for such fees. So that is what we call as indigent individuals, and those are the privileges given only to the indigent. Okay, now we also have another important thing to go through, and that is what we call as the premarital counseling and the family planning seminar. So if either of you is between ages 18 and 25, you will need to show proof to the local civil registrar that you have received the marriage counseling. And then if you do not receive the marriage counseling, your marriage license will not be issued for 3 months. So you really have to go through that counseling. And we talked about this earlier about the previous marriage. I mentioned about this. So if you have been previously married, okay, or I hope you guys here are still singles because you're still really young, okay. Anyways, for the sake of discussion, if you have been previously married, you will need to provide a death certificate of your deceased spouse if he or she died, or the judicial decree of your absolute divorce if your spouse has been divorced with his or her previous marriage. Okay, however, please take note, we don't have divorce in the Philippines, so I'm referring to someone who has been married outside the Philippines. But number three in the Philippines, the one that we have is the annulment. And so it is important that you have to provide the judicial decree of annulment or declaration of the nullity of your previous marriages. And um, there should be two witnesses, okay, for your wedding or for the marriage that you are about to enter into. Two witnesses, and both must be of legal age and in sound mind. Okay, it's not just they are of legal age, they have to be of sound mind, and those are and I mean that is definitely required by our law. And who are allowed again to solemnize the marriages in the Philippines? We have our local judiciary or judges. Even our mayors are allowed to conduct marriage ceremony or solemnize the marriage ceremony. Okay, so we have the judges, the mayors in our local towns or municipalities or cities, and then we have the rabbis, imams, and then the ministers of a registered churches or religious sects and or priests, and then we also have the generals, the commander-in-chief in military, in case of Articulo Mortis, the ship captains, and also the airplane chiefs or pilots. They're allowed to solemnize marriage, again, in a very specific situation. And then we have the consuls or the vice consuls. If you are living in a different place, okay, let's say both of you are Filipinos, but then you decided to get married in Dubai, then you can have your marriage solemnized by our consul in Dubai or anywhere else in the world. Okay, so there again, guys, a very special occasion of marriage, and that is what we call as marriage in Articulo Mortis, and that is being given a specific special preferences. Why? Because of course, it is very hard for you to go through the process when you're already at the verge of your death. You may not be able to wait, and then you may die right then and there. And so there is a specific leniency or specific or special um, privileges that is being given to that particular situation. Okay. Now, wedding locations, again, it has to be done publicly in a public church, in a chapel, temple, judicial chamber, or the offices of the consuls. And again, if it is a marriage or wedding is in Articulo Mortis, then it could be done anywhere else. Okay. No. Question, proxy marriage, is it allowed in our country? No, because earlier I specifically stated, I mean, the family code specifically stated the one that it has to be done in person, and that the declarations of I do's must be done personally by the wife or the husband. So there. Common law marriage in the Philippines, this is what we were talking about earlier, an exemption for you to get the necessary marriage license. Okay, it is only if you have been considered as a common law wife or a common law husband, wherein you have lived together for at least 5 years or beyond, but not less than 5 years. Okay, so no license shall be necessary for the marriage of a man and a woman who have lived together as husband and wife for at least 5 years and without any legal impediment to marry each other. The contracting parties shall state the foreign foregoing facts in an affidavit before any person that is authorized by law to administer the said oath. And so the solemnizing officer shall also state under oath that he ascertain the qualifications of the contracting parties are found to be of no legal impediment to marry each other. So, what do you mean by legal impediments? The legal impediments refers to someone, okay, who are not allowed to marry. Why? Because it is probably that that particular person has already been married to another person. And that is what we consider as legal impediment to enter into a marriage contract. Okay? Cousin marriages is not allowed. No, that falls under the incestuous marriage because marriage, I mean, the family code in Article 38 strictly prohibits that marriage between relatives up to the fourth civil degree are not allowed. So that when we say relatives of fourth civil degrees, it has something to do with your first cousin. So you are not allowed to marry your first cousins based in our Philippine law. Now, for the marriage license in the Philippines, it is valid only for 120 days of issue. If let's say, for example, you're so excited to get married, but then when you propose, okay, your girlfriend rather, refused your proposal, but then you already have had secure that marriage license because you're very excited. Just please take note that it has its expiry. It is only good for 120 days. And if it goes beyond, then you have to get another one for you to get legally married in the Philippines. So, there, that is how to get married in the Philippines. It's not that easy, guys, mind you. So you have to be really very ready for that one before you enter into such big responsibility and tedious task to get those requirements. So there. Again, that is how to get married in the Philippines. In connection to marriage, now let us talk about the Republic Act 10354, also known as the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Act of 2012, because the state recognizes and guarantees the human rights of all persons, including the right to equality and non discrimination of all these rights, the right to sustainable human development, the right to health, which includes the reproductive health, the right to education and information, the right to choose and make decisions for themselves in accordance with their religious convictions, ethics, culture, and demands of responsible parenthood. So, pursuant to the Declaration of State Policies under Section 12 of Article 2 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, it is the duty of the state to protect and strengthen the family as a basic autonomous social institution and equally protect the life of the mother and the life of the unborn child from conception. The state shall protect and promote the right to health of women, especially the mothers in particular, and of the people in general and instill health consciousness among them. So the family is the natural and fundamental unit of the society. We know that already, right? So the state shall likewise protect uh, and advance the right of families in particular and the people in general to a balanced and healthful environment in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature. The state also recognizes and guarantees the promotion of the equal protection of the welfare on rights of children, of the youth, and of course, even the unborn child or children. Moreover, the state also recognizes and guarantees the promotion of gender equality, gender equity, women empowerment, and of course, it includes the dignity as health and okay, and human rights concern, and as a social responsibility. Now, the advancement and the protection of women's human rights shall be the central to the efforts of the state to address the reproductive health care. So, as the state recognizes marriage as an inviolable social institution and the foundation of the family, which in turn is the foundation of the nation, because without family, no nation will ever be built. And I know you know that, guys. So, for so on two, the state shall defend the right of the spouses to found a family in accordance with their religious convictions and the demands of responsible parenthood, the right of the children to assistance, including proper care and nutrition and special protection from all forms of neglect, abuse, cruelty, exploitation, and other conditions which is prejudicial to the development of the children. And third is that the right of the family to a family living wage and income. And fourth, the right of families or family associations to participate in the planning and implementation of the said policies and programs. So the state likewise guarantees universal access to medically safe, non-abortifacient, effective, legal, affordable, really affordable, if not free, and a quality reproductive healthcare services, methods, devices, supplies, which do not prevent the implantation of a fertilized ovum as determined by the Food and Drug Administration, and relevant information also and education thereon according to the priority needs of women, children, and other underprivileged sectors, giving preferential access to those who are identified through the National Household Targeting System for Poverty Reduction and other government measures underlying marginalization, who shall be voluntarily be beneficiaries of our reproductive healthcare services and supplies. Okay, so there is a specific method in order to determine who are the specific beneficiaries also. Now, the state is aiming, no, or if not really is working to eradicate the discriminatory practices, laws, and policies that infringe on a person's exercise to have the reproductive health rights. And the state also shall promote openness to life, provided that the parents will bring forth to the world only those children whom they can raise truly in a very humane way. And that is why, guys, we have the BCM, or the birth control methods. Now, for us to be well informed about the BCM, let us talk about the specifics. So, mind you, guys, many elements need to be considered by women. Okay, it's not just women, including the men or any couples at any given point in their lifetimes when choosing the most appropriate contraceptive method. Now, these elements includes safety, effectiveness, availability, including the accessibility and the affordability, and also the acceptability of the said contraceptive method. Also, a voluntary informed choice of contraceptive methods is an essential guiding principle, and contraceptive counseling, when applicable, okay, might be an important contributor to the successful use of contraceptive methods. So, in choosing the contraceptive method as to which particular method is really right and appropriate and also healthy for you, you have to really see a professional experts for that particular concern. Okay, so it is important that you seek help, you seek advice from the experts. So what I'm saying here is that you have to go to the doctors and ask for their advice before you administer any birth control methods, because for all you know, that particular birth method that you have chosen may not be the appropriate or may not be safe for you, because again, these elements are very important for you to know: safety, effectiveness, availability, accessibility, and affordability, and of course acceptability before you submit yourself into using this particular birth control method. Okay, now another important thing when you consider the birth control method is your protection at the same time. It's not just protecting you from getting unwanted pregnancies or from getting you pregnant. It is also a good protection for you from getting sexually transmitted diseases. So ladies and gentlemen, guys and gals, please make sure that you are responsible enough before you do the sexual intercourse thing or the carnal knowledge, because it is not just plainly for pleasure. There is also this corresponding effect if you are not careful with what you are doing. Okay, so let us not just go for lust. We have to be healthy and secure in doing so at the same time. So I hope I make it clear to all of you. Now, um, let us also note, and this one, this is very important, that if you're going to use hormonal contraceptives and IUDs, they are of course highly effective at preventing pregnancy, but they do not protect you against contacting or against getting sexually transmitted diseases, including the very famous HIV disease. So consistent and correct use of the male latex condom reduces the risk for HIV infection and other sexually transmitted diseases, including the chlamydial infection, the gonococcal infection, and the trichomoniasis. Okay, these are the very common sexually transmitted diseases. And for you not to get those kind of diseases, the best protection for you is to use the latex condom for the males. Okay, And so that we will be able to know more about birth control and the safest ways to protect you guys from any sexually transmitted disease, let us now watch this video. This is a very thorough discussion on how to use or what particular birth method is deemed fit for you to use. Okay, I just downloaded these videos. I will provide you the link in our PowerPoint presentation and I will post it in our Google Classroom. So now you watch the video, guys.
Contraceptives are methods used to prevent pregnancy and, in some cases, prevent sexually transmitted infections or STIs. Almost 50% of teenagers aged 15 to 19 have experienced sexual intercourse. However, only about 78 to 85% of them use contraceptives. Having unprotected sex can put you at risk of unwanted pregnancy or contracting an STI. This video will review common methods of contraception, how they work, and how effective they are. Although there's lots of different types of sex, this video will pertain specifically to penis and vagina sex. Contraceptive effectiveness is assessed in two ways: perfect and typical use. Perfect use is the use of a contraceptive exactly as the manufacturer intended. Typical use factors in human error. Typical use would be like building a chair without following the instructions. It may turn out fine, but it may also break when you try to sit on it. There are two main categories of contraceptives: physical barriers and hormonal contraceptives. The first category is physical barriers. Physical barriers act to physically block the sperm from meeting the egg. A common type of physical barrier is a condom, which captures ejaculated semen. Condoms must be removed after sex and cannot be reused. There are two main types of condoms: the external condom, which is rolled onto an erect penis before intercourse, and the internal condom, which is inserted into the vagina and sits at the opening of the cervix on one end and covers the external genitalia on the other. This type of condom can be inserted 8 hours before sexual intercourse. With perfect use, the external condom is approximately 98% effective, and the internal condom is 95% effective. However, with typical use, the external condom has an effectiveness closer to 82%, whereas the internal condom has an effectiveness around 79%. Condoms can also greatly reduce the risk of contracting an STI, with protection being 85% greater in comparison to no condom use. Condoms can be purchased for a relatively low price without the need for prescription. The second category of contraceptives are hormonal methods. These methods involve two hormones that regulate the reproductive cycle: estrogen and progesterone. Hormonal contraceptives release either progestin and estrogen or progestin alone. Estrogen will prevent the release of an egg, so there's nothing to fertilize. Progestin will cause the uterine mucus to thicken and stop sperm from reaching the egg. Within this category, there are oral contraceptive pills, internal contraceptives, and transdermal contraceptives. It is important to note that no form of hormonal contraceptive will protect you against STIs. The first subtype is oral contraceptives. These include the combination pill and the mini pill. The combination pill contains both estrogen and progestin, while the mini pill contains only progestin. Both forms of oral contraceptives are 99.7% effective with perfect use and 92% effective with typical use. In order for either of these pills to be effective, they have to be taken at the same time each day. These pills are typically taken for 3 weeks and not taken for the 4th week. The second subtype is internal contraceptives. These include the intrauterine device and birth control rings. Intrauterine devices, also known as IUDs, are more than 99% effective with perfect use. They are T-shaped devices which are inserted into the uterus by a trained physician. There are two types of IUDs: hormonal and copper. Hormonal IUDs function by releasing progestin, while copper IUDs function by creating an inflammatory response in the cervix, which kills the sperm, and altering the cervical mucus to inhibit sperm motility. IUDs are reversible and can be used for up to 5 years for hormonal and 10 years for copper. Birth control rings are small, flexible rings that can be inserted into the vagina without a physician. They release estrogen and progestin and are kept in for 3 weeks and removed for the 4th. Birth control rings are 99.7% effective with perfect use and 92% effective in typical use. The third subtype is transdermal contraceptives, which includes the transdermal patch. The patch releases both estrogen and progestin and is applied every week for 3 weeks and left off for the 4th week. It is 99.7% effective with perfect use and 92% effective with typical use. Talk to your doctor to find out which hormonal birth control is the best for you. Emergency postcoital contraceptives, such as Plan B, can be used in the case where you've had unprotected sex or contraceptive measures have failed. Plan B can be taken up to 72 hours after the contraceptive failure of protected sex. Plan B works by preventing ovulation, and if taken within 24 hours, it is 95% effective. In summary, there are two main types of contraceptives, physical and hormonal. We have listed these contraceptives from least to most effective. As you can see here, the internal condom is the least effective, followed by the external condom. Hormonal contraceptives are very similar in terms of effectiveness and fall second only to abstinence from sex, which is 100% effective. In an emergency scenario, Plan B may be used, which is 95% effective within 24 hours. I strongly encourage you to practice safe sex by using contraceptives to protect against unwanted pregnancies and STIs.
Credits to Go Animation School for providing us that very thorough and comprehensive discussion of the different birth control methods. So, guys, if you're going to ask me what is the best and the most effective birth control method, my answer is, of course, abstinence, guys. I think we don't have to think for anything else. Abstinence, which means you just refrain from having sex with anyone unless otherwise you are ready to really get pregnant, okay? And also, if you're going to ask me, what is the best and the safest way for you not to get these sexually transmitted diseases? So the answer again is very easy. Abstinence, refrain from having sex so that you will not, contact or acquire any sexually transmitted diseases. And it's the easiest and the simplest way for you to avoid STDs. Okay, so that's it. I hope that we were able to form ideas about the erogenous zone in our body. We were able to discern our sexuality both physically and psychologically. And also, I hope that we were able to develop such a respect to people belonging to the different sexual orientations and different gender identity and expression. And I hope that through discussing this lesson, we develop a more scientific approach to the human sexual response to not just the response, but also the cycle about love and mate selection, and also the diversity of human sexuality. And lastly, I hope that we were able to understand the responsibilities of an adult through the sex education, and that we are able to practically apply these lessons from contraception to sexually transmitted diseases in order for us not in order for us to make and inform decisions about parenthood and of course about sex in general. So that's it, guys. I'll see you in our synchronous class meeting next week.